America's in crisis. Your children, my children, our families are less safe because Joe Biden is president. Everything they have touched has gone to garbage.
This is a rowdy crowd out here. I like this. Welcome. It is The Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz. Ben Ferguson with you. We are live at Turning Point in Florida with an audience. I like it. That's a rowdy crowd.
We've got a room full of 3,000 young people who are ready to transform America and take this country back.
It's nice to see a rowdy crowd that's ready to take back America. I love this.
And this is a very different gathering from, say, a Joe Biden political speech.
We can understand what's being said.
Well, there is that, and there are more than 6 people here, and they're not sitting in little circles really far away from each other.
They're not staffers.
And I feel relatively confident that neither one of us is going to wander off the stage looking for the Easter Bunny.
That's true. Or finding cocaine.
Or for that matter, let's just talk for a second. What the hell was Biden doing, like biting that little kid? I'm sorry, that's weird. Just weird.
Yeah, it was weird. This is a week, Senator, and it's going to be a really fun week, especially for, I think, this country to see what's happening on the issue. You mentioned the Bidens.
Yep.
Of Joe Biden, the Biden family corruption, and we're going to be sitting down with a man that knows a lot about this, James Comer, for a 2-part series this week. You are not going to want to miss that on Verdict, the podcast. It is a phenomenal moment, I think, for this history this week to kind of hear from these whistleblowers. But let's talk about where we are going into this week, because these whistleblowers have risked everything. And I don't think people understand. They're risking not just their lives, they're risking their careers. They're going to be ruined if the Bidens have their way. And they're coming to Congress this week to say, here's what we saw, here's what we know, and here's what was covered up.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. This is a big week, as everyone here knows, because the folks here at Turning Point, y'all are engaged, you're following what's happened, you're informed. I gotta say, the evidence that is coming out of Biden family corruption, it keeps growing and growing and growing. In this podcast, we do it 3 days a week. We do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And it is, every month we're getting just under 1 million unique listeners. We're beating CNN every single week.
You can clap for that one.
And what's powerful about it is we try to walk people through and give them the information that doesn't get covered on TV, that doesn't get covered in the ordinary meeting. So, for example, the Biden family corruption evidence. This week, we're going to have, hopefully, both IRS whistleblowers on Wednesday testifying before the House of Representatives. Immediately after that happens, that night, Wednesday night, we're going to have James Comer, the chairman of the committee that is going to be having both IRS whistleblowers, is going to be a guest on Verdict. We're going to do 2 episodes, record them Wednesday night, and put them out Thursday morning and Friday morning. If you look at what's come out now, you've got 2 senior career employees at the IRS who've come forward and said, we are seeing a pattern of corruption. We're seeing a pattern of corruption, number 1, of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. And listen, the important thing to keep in mind, this is not about whether Hunter Biden is running around on crack with guns and prostitutes. He is. But if it were just that, it would not be an issue of national concern. The issue is, did Hunter sell access to Daddy, then the Vice President of the United States, now the President of the United States, and was Daddy corrupt? And the answer, the evidence at this point is overwhelming. Look, you look at the WhatsApp text that Hunter Biden sent, and I want to revisit it because this is as close to a smoking gun about corruption from the president as you're ever going to see. Here's what Hunter Biden texted to a senior Chinese communist official, quote, I am sitting here with my father. By the way, count how many times you hear references to Joe Biden, not Hunter, Joe. I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. Tell the director that I would like to resolve this now, before it gets out of hand, and now means tonight. And Z, if I get a call or text from anyone involved in this other than you, Zhang, or the chairman, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me, that's 3, and every person he knows, that's 4, and my ability to forever hold a grudge that you will regret not following my direction, I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. 5. Now, I got to say, last week, Chris Wray, the director of the FBI, was asked in a congressional hearing, was that a shakedown? And he refused to answer the question. Look, that is as transparently a shakedown as you will ever see.
And it's not just the shakedown, it's the fact that we have evidence after the shakedown that it worked. You had $5+ million, Senator, come into a bank account connected directly to the Bidens.
5 for Hunter and 5 for Joe.
Right, but a week after that was sent, within a week, the money came in the bank account, and these are all the suspicious activity reports, all the LLCs, and we even know that the Bidens at one point said there's so many LLCs that we've set up, shell companies, they'll never be able to figure it out.
And by the way, let's be clear, that there are potentially defenses to this text. You could say it's fraudulent. Well, Hunter hadn't said that. He doesn't deny that this is a real WhatsApp message he sent. You could also say Hunter was lying, that he wasn't in fact sitting next to Joe Biden, but he hadn't said that. The White House hasn't said that. They haven't denied that Joe Biden was sitting right next to them while he was shaking down a communist Chinese and trying to extort $10 million from him. And now we have new breaking news. So you're looking into, so I got to say, Hunter and Joe had a great business. They shook down just about every rotten, corrupt enemy of America they could find. So they went to the Chinese. That was very profitable. But they also went to Burisma, the natural gas company in Ukraine. And what broke this week, so the Ukrainian oligarch who owns Burisma, Mykola Zlochevsky, not a good guy. What we have seen now is an email that went on November 2nd, 2015, from an executive at Burisma, a guy named Vadim Pozharsky, who emailed Hunter Biden, Devon Archer, and Eric Schwerin about a revised proposal. And here's what the email says. My only concern is for us to be on the same page re our final goals. With this in mind, I would like to formulate a list of deliverables, including but not limited to a concrete course of actions, including meeting communications resulting in high-ranking U.S. officials in Ukraine, U.S. ambassador, and in U.S. publicly or in private communications expressing their positive opinion and support of Nikolai, who's the oligarch, Burisma, at the highest level of decision makers. Mind you, we've talked on Verdict before about what expertise did Hunter have in oil and gas and natural gas. He didn't speak Ukrainian. He probably couldn't find Ukraine on a map. Well, we now know what his expertise was. His expertise was daddy. His expertise was his last name. And just to show there was no subtlety here, this is the sentence that is most important, which is the ultimate purpose to close down for any cases, pursuits against Nikolai in Ukraine. Now that is in writing. From Burisma, the ultimate purpose, why did they pay Hunter Biden $83,000 a month? The ultimate purpose is to close down any cases, pursuits against Nikolai in Ukraine. Well, you know what? 3 months later, Joe Biden traveled to Ukraine. 3 months later, Joe Biden sat down with leaders in Ukraine and he engaged in a quid pro quo. Remember quid pro quo?
Oh, yeah.
He made a very explicit quid pro quo. He said, we're going to hold up over $1 billion in U.S. aid unless you fire the prosecutor who's investigating the Ukrainian oligarch. And Joe Biden, who's on film saying it, his response was, well, son of a bitch. They fired him. Now, this email is really significant, and this is why the podcast matters, because it takes you into the substance. Why is this email significant? Because the ridiculous Democrat talking point that their cheering squad in the corporate media repeats is they say, no. That prosecutor was fired because he wasn't vigorous enough in prosecuting corruption. It really is a ludicrous point, but that's their talking point. Well, you know what? We now have in writing 3 months before Joe Biden got on the plane, the ultimate purpose is get that guy fired. And I got to say, the oligarch got what he paid for. He purchased a vice president, he got a vice president, and the vice president got the prosecutor fired in Ukraine.
I want to ask you this question about these whistleblowers and just how brave they are this week. They're coming forward. We mentioned this a moment ago. They're risking everything. They're risking their careers. They're risking, I would argue, their lives. They are risking retaliation from a DOJ and an FBI and the Biden administration. If they come forward with what we expect them to come forward with, how damning is this to Joe Biden specifically, and does this put his presidency at risk now?
It absolutely does. This testimony, look, it's important to understand this testimony is not from right-wing Republicans. It's not from people that have an axe to grind against Joe Biden. These are career IRS employees. One of them, Gary Shapley, has testified as a senior supervisor and agent. Another one, who we only know as Mr. X, but we also know he is a gay Democrat married to a man. And he's a career IRS employee. Now, on the face of that self-identified information does not suggest some right-wing activist who hates Joe Biden. What it suggests is someone who looked at this and said, this is fundamentally corrupt, but what those whistleblowers have testified to is that Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, lied, and he lied under oath to Congress in response to questioning that I asked him.
Let's say that again. That's big.
So I asked him in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Merrick Garland said under oath there is zero political interference in the investigation into Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. The whistleblower said he was lying. Not only that, the whistleblower said that he conducted conduct that is obstruction of justice. And let me be clear what should happen. Number one, I've called for this already. The Department of Justice needs to appoint a special counsel to investigate and prosecute Merrick Garland for lying under oath and obstruction of justice.
Amen to that.
Number two, the House of Representatives should impeach Merrick Garland. And number three, if the evidence confirms what that text says and what the whistleblowers are saying, that the President of the United States took bribes. And let me be clear, that impeachment is not for high crimes and misdemeanors. Remember all the discussions about high crimes and misdemeanors? The Constitution provides for impeachment for treason, bribery, or other high crimes or misdemeanors. Well, bribery is explicitly listed, and if the big guy, and by the way, the IRS whistleblowers say they were prevented from investigating the big guy. Merrick Garland said no questions about Joe Biden, including, you know, one thing they weren't allowed to ask? All right, Hunter Biden says this text, I'm sitting next to my father. The investigators said, hey, can we look at GPS to see if Joe Biden was sitting next to Hunter Biden? And DOJ, according to the whistleblower, said, nope, don't want to know that. No, that would be a problem. Don't look at that at all.
Is it because maybe they know that they were actually sitting next to each other? Is there a good chance, Senator?
Okay.
That might be the reason why.
So what I'm wondering is when he was sitting next to him, which one was holding the bag of cocaine?
Yeah. Well, the text was well written, so
and to be
I doubt
clear,
that was
by
Biden.
the way, you go into one of the most secure buildings in the world with cameras everywhere, with Secret Service agents everywhere, and really, who can figure out whose cocaine it is?
Right next to the Oval.
Who hasn't taken a Schedule I drug into the White House, left it right there, and suddenly the Secret Service, oh, no, can't figure it out, don't want to know.
What's even more shocking is, did you guys see this story? And this was amazing. You and I talked about this on Verdict the other day. When the Secret Service were asked by Congress about the cocaine, they're like, oh, we found other drugs there too.
Oh yeah,
They
we find
found a
pot
bunch
all
of
the time.
weed.
I mean, look, these are Democrats. We're surprised when they're not stoned. All right. So for the end of the podcast, we're going to do a couple of things. One, we're going to do a Q&A with you guys now. So you guys are going to get a chance to be on Verdict. I have no idea what y'all are going to ask, but that's okay. I have no idea what we're going to say in response. So we're going to do that. Microphones are where? Microphone right there, microphone right there. All right, so come on up. We're going to ask you, because this is going out live. If you have a question, ask it briefly. We do this, by the way, on lefty college campuses. And our rule on a college campus, we say if you have a hostile question, if you have a mean and antagonistic question, come to the front. So, all right, let's start. Who's first in line?
Hello, Ted. My name is Caden Smith. I'm from the great state of Nebraska. And my question for you is, how do we control the narrative here with the Democrats? Like, how do we get them out of our schools? How do we just, like, totally shut down leftist ideology?
It is a fabulous question. So let me say thank you for being here. A big part of it is what you're doing right here. A big part of it is being here, being smart, being engaged, being educated, knowing the facts, and understand what you're dealing with. Understand that you're dealing with, number one, a corporate media that lies. They are not journalists. They are not trying to inform. They are propagandists. They are the left wing of the Democrat Party. Number two, for young people, the Democrat socialist agenda is to control every aspect of your lives, to control what you think, what you believe, how you worship, how you act, everything. These are the same idiots that shut the country down, that shut schools down, and that shut skate parks down. They literally brought bulldozers to put sand to stop people from skating because, you know,
that's where you get COVID.
You get COVID by skating outside. By the way, I got to say, a joke that I tell that my wife Heidi hates when I tell. But you ever notice a guy driving down the road, alone in a car, wearing a mask? And I got to say, every time I see that, that's kind of like a guy laying alone in a bed wearing a condom. Like, what exactly is the point here? What are you trying to accomplish?
I'm not sure I want to know.
You definitely don't want to know. But look, I want to say what y'all are doing, young people are getting screwed by the agenda of the radical left. And every one of you have a platform in your high schools, in your colleges, with your friends, with your family. Use your platform. Listen, how do we communicate and win the narrative? We started this podcast now nearly 4 years ago to do that. So I want to ask everyone here to do something to help control the narrative, which is pull out your cell phone right now and text the word verdict, V-E-R-D-I-C-T. Text the word verdict to the number 24005. Let me give you that number again. 24005. Text the word verdict. What you will get is a link to subscribe to Verdict. And the reason we put this out is to give you the information, look, discussing the email that just came out saying the ultimate purpose of Burisma was to get the prosecutor fired. You know where you won't find that? CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS. And sometimes Fox. And look, to be honest, on the networks, they don't have the time. I go on Fox all the time. I go on Newsmax. I go on OAN. You can go do a 5-6 minute interview. You can get into a little bit of this. But when it's complicated, what a podcast like Verdict lets you do is go through the substance and get into the meat. All right, next question.
Mike from Arizona. I am so tired of hearing we're going to hold them responsible. I want to know why, after 6 months, we can't put anybody in jail.
It's a great question.
So Mike, thank you for that question. You are exactly right, and it is infuriating and frustrating. And I'll tell you, let me tell you why people haven't gone to jail. Because under our Constitution and the federal government, the only people who can bring a prosecution is the executive branch of the government, and in particular, the United States Department of Justice. That means no member of the legislature can bring an indictment, no member of the legislature can convene a grand jury, no member of the legislature can prosecute a case. Likewise, no member of the court, no judge can say, I'm going to prosecute someone. It is only the executive branch, and it is why it is such a tragic disaster that we have a Biden administration led by Merrick Garland, the most political attorney general in history, who refuses to enforce the law. And so the chances that Merrick Garland will prosecute Joe Biden or Hunter Biden or anyone else, and to be clear, the deal with Hunter Biden is not a prosecution. It is a sweetheart deal meant to insulate Hunter and protect Joe Biden, the big guy. The chances that Merrick Garland will prosecute them are zero, which means here's what we need to do. In Congress, the House can impeach, and I believe the House should impeach Alejandro Mayorkas, should impeach Merrick Garland, and should impeach Joe Biden. That we can do constitutionally. Now, to be clear, when all three of them are impeached, the chances that the Senate will convict are zero, because Senate Democrats don't care. They could have videotape of Joe Biden taking bribes from foreign officials. They don't care. They wouldn't vote to convict. I joke that you could have videotape of Joe Biden strangling children under a full moon while listening to Pat Benatar. And no Democrat would vote to convict. And you know what the media lost their minds about?
Pat Benatar.
Pat Benatar.
Yeah.
They're like, what has he got against Pat Benatar?
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, you're missing the point here.
Yeah.
Stay focused. So what I will say, and state attorneys general, you're right that local prosecutors, if there have been local crimes, can bring cases. But let me say, what we can do is every person here can educate and inform and help people know about the corruption and illegality, and we can hold people to account politically, and then we've got to throw the bums out of the executive branch and get
Amen.
a new administration that will enforce the law and prosecute the criminals. All right, last question.
Denise Nystrom from Bonita Springs, Florida. First of all, Senator Cruz, I just want to thank you for your leadership. You have integrity. We love you.
Thank you.
So I am a grassroots conservative candidate who ran for school board, but like many people, we get up against the machine and they have more money than they know what to do with. How do we win?
Fantastic question. First of all, thank you for running for school board. That is a big, big deal. Let me encourage everyone here, get involved in elections, and get involved in elections at the presidential level, at the Senate level, at the House level, but also at school boards. We are winning school board races all over the country. You want to know the power of what y'all are doing? Take a look at Virginia. Virginia, in 2020, Biden won Virginia by 10 points. A year later, Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, won Virginia, and it was over the issue of schools and critical race theory and the radicals in those schools who were covering up sexual assaults by a boy dressed as a girl in a skirt who assaulted a teenage girl in a bathroom. And I got to tell you, the moms in Virginia were so upset that a whole bunch of moms who had voted for Joe Biden said enough is enough is enough, and they flipped over and voted Republican. That's the power of what y'all are doing. And Miami-Dade is an example. We've seen school board races throughout Texas where this has happened. And let me make this final point. You want to understand how insane it is. There's a story that broke just a couple of days ago. New York is paying teachers who flunked the proficiency exam to be a teacher, paying them $1.8 billion because when they flunked the proficiency exam, they lost their job. And they brought a lawsuit, and New York just settled. Mayor Bill de Blasio, in his final weeks going out, he's giving teachers who flunked basic proficiency, they're getting checks of $1 million, $2 million apiece. Now, New York spends about $38,000 per student in its public schools. It has terrible results. Many of the kids come out not being able to read. And now, you want to know what happens when Democrats are in charge? They write $2 billion worth of checks and they ensure you can't actually have qualified teachers teach your kids. You can't expect teachers to know how to do reading or writing or arithmetic, and that is hurting low-income kids throughout this country. In New York, if you're a low-income kid, if you're an African-American kid, if you're an Hispanic kid, the Democrats say, you don't have a right to an education. What we care about is the teacher that can't pass the test, and we're going to give them $1 million and let them keep teaching you when they don't know what it is they're teaching you. That is idiotic. And so what I want to say to everyone on Turning Point, everyone watching this on YouTube, everyone listening to it and downloading the podcast at home, share this with your friends. Say, is it a good idea for kids, and especially our most vulnerable, is it a good idea to have them taught by teachers that don't have basic proficiency and that flunk the test? Because that's what New York Democrats are doing, and those are the kind of issues that turn suburban moms who voted Democrat previously into saying, this doesn't make any sense. I'm going to stand with our kids, and I'll tell you, the high school and college kids here, y'all have a better platform and a better voice to speak the truth than anyone. And so thank you, Turning Point. Thank you to the men and women. God bless you.